Number 10. Garfield. In the 80s in France, people were baffled when Garfield started constantly washing up on shore, specifically a phone that is in the shape of the orange cat. The phenomenon went on for 35 more years, Garfields continuously drifting ashore like a chubby lasagna-loving message in a bottle. The pictures of the water-damaged cats polluting rocks and beaches look like something straight out of a movie or a weird Photoshop. The reasoning behind the cats taking over France wasn't revealed until 2019, when it was discovered that a shipping container had fallen off a boat and became trapped in an underwater cave. Comments on the situation said things like, "I'm going to assume that the shipwreck happened on a Monday," and another person pointed out the fact that this means the Garfields weren't even packaged or organized, just thrown loose into the container in a mountain of orange. Number 9. Train graveyard. In 1985, a man named Paul Hepler was mapping the bottom of the ocean near New Jersey when his device picked up a reading of two massive metal objects. 90 feet underwater, he discovered two different trains that had been missing since the 1850s. He said, "I didn't know what it was at first because the water was dirty and the visibility was so bad back then. Once I got a better look at it in later dives, I could see they were locomotives." The trains are incredibly rare models, as only a few were made before they quickly became obsolete. The interesting thing is, nobody knows how the trains actually came to rest under the 90 feet of water. Some theories suggesting that they were being transported across the ocean when they were hit by a bad storm, falling overboard and quickly sinking to the ocean floor. The trains have no record of going missing and don't even have any record of ever being built. Number 8. Robot hand. Let's not go very far and take a look at something that washed up on a beach in Staten Island. An organization called Underwater New York is responsible for photographing and documenting unusual objects that either wash up on beaches in New York or are found lurking on the ocean floor. A couple was walking down Great Kills Park Beach when they discovered a metal object in the sand. It turned out to be a large robotic hand with articulated fingers, though some of the fingers were missing. There seems to be no explanation for where the hand came from, so it could be similar to the other stories where some sort of animatronic was being shipped across the water before meeting an unfortunate demise. Or it could be remnants of a robot versus alien war that took place thousands of years ago before humans inhabited the Earth, but that's just my theory. Underwater New York has lots of cool and creepy photos, so check out their site if you're interested in more. Number 7. Yonaguni Complex. Yonaguni, Japan made their own discovery in 1985, but unfortunately this time it was not Garfield. Instead, divers found what appeared to be a massive underwater pyramid. There were also 5 other structures in various states of falling apart: temples, a stadium, a castle, a massive arch, and more. They're all connected by roads and what appears to have once been a massive wall surrounding everything. There are also carved inscriptions which appear to have been written in an old language that was once used in the area. A Japanese marine biologist suggests that this is a sort of Japanese Atlantis, a civilization that they believe sank around 5,000 years ago. They figured this out by dating stalactites that were found in underwater caves that they think sank alongside the city. Some people believe that these are just natural formations, but the city layout seems too perfect to just be naturally occurring. Number 6. Undersea river. Now let's look at something that is naturally occurring but still pretty damn cool and bizarre. If you've ever watched SpongeBob, you know that they appear to have a beach underwater, and you probably thought that that was pretty ridiculous. But turns out it's actually pretty real. Researchers discovered a massive flowing river at the bottom of the Black Sea, complete with rapid waters and even waterfalls. It reaches depths of 115 feet and even has a volume of water more than the River Thames. It functions basically the same as a river on land, carving out water channels and even flooding plains. So how does this happen? Well, it's due to the content of the water. The undersea river has a higher salt content, making it denser, causing it to stay near the ocean floor and flow with its own current. It has provided us a lot of insight into how sea creatures in certain areas survive, and it's just pretty damn cool to look at. Number 5. Flying saucer. We're at the halfway point, and that means it's alien time. Treasure hunters were using sonar to sweep the Baltic Sea when they picked up what appeared to be a shipwreck. But it wasn't just any normal shipwreck, it looked to be an alien shipwreck. It is known as the Baltic Sea anomaly, and they couldn't really figure out what it might actually be. From above, it looks like the exact shape of the Millennium Falcon, but I don't think they found Han Solo anywhere nearby. It's also absolutely massive, being around 197 feet in diameter. The group that made the discovery said, "Let us put it like this. We have tried a lot of theories. The list is getting shorter and shorter with options, so for now we don't really know. We do not have anything that speaks more for one option or the other." Other theories include things like a Russian spaceship or a World War II submarine device, but I'll stick with aliens for now. Number 4. Mysterious structure. Archaeologists discovered a massive cone-shaped structure in the Sea of Galilee. The form is made up of boulders. It is absolutely massive, 70 meters in diameter and 200 meters down below sea level, estimated to weigh around 60,000 tons. They have found structures like this before, which were used thousands of years ago to attract and breed fish, but this one is absolutely massive compared to all the others that they've found. They think it may have also been created to attract fish when there was an economy based around fish and marine life. They also think that it may have originally been created on land but eventually sunk underwater as sea levels rose over time. It's also been suggested that this was a structure used to mark a grave or large burial ground. The researchers reporting that they believe the structure could be around 4,000 years old. Number 3. Underwater prison. Who doesn't love an abandoned prison? But maybe that's not enough to get you excited anymore. So how about an underwater abandoned prison? A prison was established in Estonia outside of a small town, being put together by the Soviet Union. It was located on the edge of a limestone quarry, and they used the prisoners to work in the quarry and collect the goods. It lasted like this for a while until Estonia gained their independence in 1991. The Soviets moved out, leaving behind everything that they had established, including the prison. Because of this and the fact that no one was maintaining the groundwater, it started to flood into the quarry, effectively creating a new lake in its place. As the water level rose, it completely swallowed the quarry and a majority of the prison buildings. Only a small part of the prison is still visible above the water, and it's now become a very popular spot for divers. Number 2. Rubber ducks. 30 years ago, almost 30,000 rubber ducks took a trip around the world, and they didn't even have to pay for a cruise ticket. Similarly to the Garfield phones, the bath toys were being transported from China to the United States in a shipping container. But unfortunately, the container fell into the water and opened up, releasing 28,800 rubber ducks into the sea. They followed the currents and ended up in many different destinations across the world, being reported in places like Hawaii, the United Kingdom, and South Africa. Many different people went in search of the ducks in hopes to both find and track their journeys, and one such person even wrote a book about it titled Moby Duck. While a paddling of bright yellow ducks in the middle of the ocean is pretty fun to look at, it gets stomped on by the massive conversation about pollution and plastics in our waters. Number 1. Underwater spiders. Now let's end it off with something creepy and disgusting and just horrible to think about. At least for me anyways. 250 years ago, explorers first encountered the scuba spider, a spider that actually lives underwater. They do this by trapping air bubbles in their web, using it like a fish gill. When scientists captured 12 of these spiders to study them, they discovered that the creature can breathe underwater for over 24 hours, able to hide itself away from both predators and prey. An entomologist said, "It shows how amazing and versatile spiders can be, and I honestly wish spiders would just be a little less amazing and versatile." So next time you're in the ocean and get frightened by a piece of seaweed brushing your leg, don't panic. It's probably not seaweed, just a spider.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Nina. The Nina was a ship that was once the flagship of the New York Yacht Club, but that unfortunately changed in 2013 when it disappeared on the Tasman Seas with its owner and 6 other people on board. The ship had left New Zealand and was bound for Australia on May 29th, and it was estimated to be somewhere from an 8 to 10 day trip. The last time the ship was heard from was on June 4th, and it wasn't until June 12th that the search for the ship began after friends and family of those on board began to get worried as the ship was now a few days overdue. The rescuers searched until it was called off on July 6th after they had searched 737,000 square nautical miles and had found nothing. The search was extremely thorough and they still were unable to find anything. No yacht, no debris, no life raft, and none of the people on board. The last communications with the Nina came on June 3rd and 4th as a crew member was contacting a meteorologist and router for Pacific cruisers in order to get some advice on where the ship should go so as to escape a nasty storm they were encountering. There was also an undelivered text message from June 4th that the satellite phone company was able to retrieve that stated that the storm sails had been shredded the night before and that they would update them later at 6 p.m. with the course info. This definitely wasn't an ideal situation, but the message didn't signal that they would have been in immediate distress either. Aside from these messages, there wasn't any other contact that seemed to have been attempted, despite the ship being well equipped with emergency radios, flares, a satellite phone, and all of that sort of thing. Right now, the best guess as to what happened is that the ship may have sunk really quickly following the storms, and it didn't allow any time for the passengers to activate any of the emergency equipment, but at the end of the day, this is all just a guess, and what exactly happened out there still remains a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the mysterious whale die-off. Between 2015 and 2016, there was a mysterious large die-off of whales located in the Gulf of Alaska. The deaths first began to be discovered in late May of 2015 when the carcasses of endangered fin whales were found floating near Kodiak. The total of whales found in the area climbed to 30, with additional reports of 5 other whales found in the waters just off of British Columbia. Because of the difficulties in retrieving the past whales, it was almost impossible to find out what exactly was causing this. The leading suspect was a toxin being produced by algae, but when one of the carcasses that researchers were able to recover was tested, it came up negative for the toxin that they were searching for. It is possible that the decomposition that had already taken place was the cause for this negative test, but it's also equally as possible that this just wasn't the cause in the first place. The good news is that since 2016, this strange and upsetting anomaly has stopped, so the whales are safe. But unfortunately, we aren't any closer to getting answers on what exactly happened here. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Kaz 2. The Kaz 2 was a 12-meter long catamaran that set sail on April 15th of 2007 and was found adrift just 3 days later on April 18th, but without her crew. When the ship set sail, she was carrying 3 crew members, all of which were relatively inexperienced sailors. On April 18th, someone in a helicopter reported seeing the adrift ship, but it wasn't until April 20th that maritime authorities were able to catch up with the boat and boarded it. It was then, however, that they uncovered the bizarre circumstances on the ship. Everything on the ship was perfectly normal, aside from the fact that the crew had just seemingly vanished. There was a meal set on the table waiting to be eaten, a laptop was open and on, the engine was still running, all of the life vests were still on board, and all of the ship's emergency systems were fully functioning. The only out of place things were, of course, the missing crew, the fact that one of the ship's sails was badly shredded, and there was no life raft on board, but it is still unclear whether there was ever one on board. There are many theories as to what may have happened to the crew, but none have ever been substantiated or confirmed, which leaves the fate of the 3 crew members a complete mystery that we may never get the answers to. In our number 7 spot today, we have the disappearance of Bas Jan Ader. Bas Jan Ader was a Dutch conceptual and performance artist as well as a skilled sailor. He set sail on July 9th, 1975 in a ship called the Ocean Wave as he was setting sail to make his single-handed west to east coast crossing of the North Atlantic. He estimated that this trip was going to take around 2.5 months, but it wasn't until 9 months after he set sail that his boat was found unmanned, floating almost vertically in the water. The people who found the ship were Spanish fishermen who then took the boat back to Spain, where it ended up being stolen. Throughout all of this, Baz was nowhere to be found, and even still, over 40 years later, the mystery of what exactly happened remains. There are people who speculate he fell overboard in heavy bad weather, but this is of course impossible to tell, especially with neither the boat or Baz to provide evidence. The information to go on has only been what was provided by the people who saw the boat before before it was stolen, so of course that is not nearly enough to really have any questions answered. What happened to Baz on his sailing trip is still a mystery, but I do hope one day we find out at least some answers. In our number 6 spot today we have the Gulf of Mexico wreck. For almost 2 centuries, this shipwreck went undiscovered and undisturbed until the early 2000s when a pipeline bisected it, and since then it has been plaguing those who are trying to figure out what mysteries it holds. A team was assembled in order to try and search the wreckage, but every time they attempted, something went wrong that made it impossible for them. Every time they tried, the exploration sub would malfunction right before they were able to begin checking it out. Like, I'm talking about everything, from video monitors going out whenever they fired the thrusters, to the sonar breaking, to hydraulics going haywire, one after another. After this whole ordeal, the Navy sent a research sub that pretty much just ended up self-destructing its own rover once it got into the water, and when it made its way to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything to collect. So this is all to say that it seems like whatever mysteries this shipwreck is holding, they are destined to remain as such. I'm starting to think that maybe this shipwreck is cursed. In our number 5 spot today we have the disappearance of George Smith. George Allen Smith and his wife Jennifer Hagel Smith had just married and were aboard the MS Brilliance of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, as they were doing a Mediterranean cruise for their honeymoon. On July 5th, 2005, the ship was somewhere just off of the coast of Turkey when it was discovered that George had disappeared. The night he was last seen, he was intoxicated from both alcohol as well as prescription drugs, and there was blood evidence found in his cabin as well on the side of the ship. There were 2 main theories in regards to his disappearance, the first being that his intoxication led to him falling overboard the ship, and the other was that perhaps a robbery had gone bad and foul play had been involved. This case was investigated for over a decade, with even the FBI and their mafia division getting involved at one point. But despite this, neither George, his body, or what really happened to him has ever been found. There have been many assumptions made over the years, but 16 years later, it is still a mystery. In our number 4 spot today, we have the MV Tai Ching 21. On November 9th, 2008, a Taiwanese fishing vessel was found floating, but it was empty and had been totally gutted by fire. The 50-ton ship had obviously suffered a fire, but since there was no smoke anymore, it was clear it had been a few days since the fire was put out. Upon inspecting the ship, it was realized that the ship's lifeboat, along with its 3 life rafts, were missing, not to mention the crew of 29 missing men. The last transmission from the radio of the ship was on October 28th, but after that, nothing had been heard from the members of the crew and there was no mayday call ever received. The search for the missing men spanned 21,000 square miles or 54,000 square kilometers, and searches were conducted by both the US Air Force as well as the New Zealand Air Force, but unfortunately the search turned up no results. The last radio transmission from the ship was a personal call from the captain to his wife, which took place on that October 25th, but that was the last time anyone had heard. There still hasn't been any sign of the missing 29 crew members, which of course is absolutely devastating. It is clear they must have abandoned the ship after the fire started, but their fate from there remains completely unknown. In our number 3 spot today we have the disappearance of Rebecca Corium. Rebecca Corium was a British crew member and youth worker on the Disney Wonder cruise ship in 2011. In the early morning hours of March 22nd, Rebecca was seen on CCTV footage in the crew lounge speaking to someone on the telephone, and it appears as though the conversation was a bit emotionally distressing for her. A few hours later, people began to worry because Rebecca hadn't shown up for the start of her shift, which was really unlike her, and when people went to go and see if maybe she had slept in or something like that, they were unable to locate her anywhere on the ship, which of course made people even more worried. That CCTV footage of Rebecca is the last known sighting of her, and since then no one has been able to figure out where she went or what happened to her. The first assumption was of course that perhaps she had gone overboard, and it prompted extensive searches of the waters in the area, but unfortunately nothing turned up. Almost an entire year after her disappearance, someone emailed Rebecca's family to say that she was 85% sure she had seen Rebecca with a man on the streets of Venice, but unfortunately this potential lead didn't turn up any real evidence or clues. Many people state that perhaps Disney Cruise Lines know more about what really happened, as other crew members have suggested that the entire ship is covered with so many cameras that there's no way that whatever happened could have been missed, but of course there's no evidence that has been discovered which would prove these allegations. It has been 10 years since Rebecca's extremely mysterious disappearance, and still no one knows exactly what happened on that terrible night. Hopefully one day some answers are found so Rebecca's family can get the closure that they deserve. In our number 2 spot today we have the disappearance of Jim Gray. Jim Gray was an incredibly important computer scientist who was responsible for many computer advancements that changed things for all of us. Other than being a computer scientist, he was also an experienced and skilled sailor, and one day on January 28, 2007, he set sail for a short trip so he could head out and spread his mother's ashes, as she had recently passed away. As he began his trip, Jim spoke to his wife on the phone and said he would call her once he got back in range. After their phone call, he called his daughter as well and left a little message for her, and then he was off on his trip, but unfortunately he never ended up returning. Jim's wife Donna was the one who raised the alarm bells as she was away on a trip, but like I mentioned, Jim said he would call her later, and he never did. At this point is when the huge searches began. Thousands of images of the area where Jim or his boat might be were uploaded to Amazon Mechanical Turk for people to look through and see if they could find any kind of signs, but to no avail. Jim also had an automatic emergency position indicating beacon on his ship, but whatever happened to Jim and the ship clearly didn't meet the requirements, or perhaps it had some sort of malfunction, or maybe it was even turned off. To this day, no one knows what happened to Jim or his boat, as no sign or trace of either has ever been found. The theories of what may have happened are endless and range from Jim intentionally disappearing to him being kidnapped for his computer skills and brain in order to do some kind of inside job, and really everything in between. There most definitely are theories that are seemingly more likely than others, but at the end of the day, they are all a possibility. In 2012, Jim's widow asked the court to declare him dead in absentia, which ended up being granted, so as of 2012, Jim has been declared dead, but that does not mean that he is. In our number 1 spot today we have the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley. On March 21st, 1998, Amy and her family boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean cruise ship en route to Curacao. On March 24th, after a fun night on the ship, Amy was hanging out and having a couple of drinks with the ship's band, and one of the members explained that she parted ways with them around 1 a.m. After this, around 5:15 a.m., Amy's father said he saw her sleeping on the cabin balcony. Unfortunately, however, once 6 a.m. rolled around, she wasn't there anymore, and this was the beginning of the mystery. Once it was realized that Amy was missing, extensive searches were launched for full days before they ended up being called off when no signs or traces of Amy had ever been found. While this is all super mysterious and nobody really had anything to go on, the plot only thickens with this story. After her disappearance, people began to report seeing Amy. One sighting was by Canadian tourists in 1998 who said that they had seen a woman who resembled Amy and who had tattoos that matched hers on a beach in Curacao. A member of the United States Navy said that he saw her in a brothel and said that she told him her name was Amy and she asked for help, saying she wasn't allowed to leave. The most recent alleged sighting comes in 2005 when a woman claimed she saw Amy in a department store in Barbados. She said that Amy entered the restroom with 3 men who then threatened her if she didn't follow through on some sort of deal. The men left briefly and the witness said the woman turned to her, said that her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia and needed help, but the men returned right after to take her away again. This story is devastatingly sad and has so many turns, and to this day no one knows exactly what happened to Amy or if these witness sightings are accurate at all.
Number 10. giant oarfish. An oarfish really looks like a fish-snake hybrid, as it's a huge, greatly elonged fish. The giant oarfish is the longest bony fish alive, growing up to 36 feet in length. It is found in areas spanning from temperate ocean zones to tropical ones. But unfortunately, we know little about the oarfish because it lives deep underwater and it's rarely seen. However, we know it neither feeds on humans nor fishes, but on small marine creatures like crustaceans and krill. It was officially discovered in 1772, and in September 1996, the United States Navy SEALs found a giant oarfish that washed up on the shore near San Diego, California, and it was 23 feet long. The giant oarfish is by far the largest member of its fish family, at a published total length of 26 feet, with unconfirmed reports of 36 feet and 56 feet specimens and 600 pounds in weight. Now, even though those aren't confirmed, the 20-foot long one still scares me immensely. Number 9. Giant squid. So the kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size and is said to appear off the coast of Norway, but what if I told you it was real? A giant squid was found on a shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired, as it lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 60 feet, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale. However, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of this century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 8. Ribbon worm. Most ribbon worms are very slim, usually only a few millimeters wide, although a few have relatively short but wide bodies. Many have a pattern of yellow, orange, red, and green coloration, and they move slowly using their external cilia to glide on surfaces on a trail of slime, while larger species use muscular waves to crawl. Most of these worms burrow in sediments, lurk in crevices between shells, stones, or the holdfasts of algae or sessile animals. Others build semi-permanent burrows lined with mucus or produce cellophane-like tubes. Mainly in the tropics and subtropics, about 12 species appear in freshwater, and about a dozen species live on the land in cool, damp places, for example under rotting logs. Now these just sound disgusting to me, and I never want to get close to one. Number 7. Hagfish. With a name like that, I think you can expect this thing to be quite ugly. And it is. It actually makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, just look at it. Ew, like how is that even real? Now, hagfish are eel-shaped, slime-producing marine fish, and they are the only known living animals that have a skull but no vertebral column, although hagfish do have rudimentary vertebrae. Hagfish are jawless, and living hagfish remain similar to hagfish from around 30 million years ago. There are estimated to be 76 species of hagfish, and some live as deep as 5,500 feet below the water's surface. They're also known as slime eels because of the goop their bodies produce to ward off predators. These animals can grow to be between 16 and 40 inches long, and some live as deep as 5,600 feet below the water's surface, and as long as they stay away from me though, that's all that matters. Number 6. Barrel eye. The barrel eye, also known as a spookfish, has extremely light-sensitive eyes on top of its fluid-filled head. The barrel eye was first described in 1939, but remained a mystery to scientists until 2009, when they discovered that its large tubular eyes could actually rotate inside its head. This rotational ability allows them to look upward for potential prey or face forward to see what it is eating. Since barrel eyes live at such depths where there is hardly any light, their tubular eyes help them see whatever faint amounts of light drift down to them. They also have 2 spots above their mouths, which are called nars, similar to human nostrils. Now, I understand why they're called spookfish though, because they do look extremely spooky. Number 5. The slender snipe eel. The slender snipe eel, one of the most compact deep-sea critters, can grow to a minimum length of 4 feet, but weighs no more than 6 or 7 ounces. It has a bird-like beak with curving tips covered with tiny hooked teeth, which they use to sweep through the water to catch shrimp and other crustaceans. It has a lifespan of 10 years and has more vertebrae in its backbone than any other animal, which is around 750. However, its anus has moved forward during its evolution, and it's now located on the throat, so that's nice. Their reproduction is done by spawning, which is when a female lays eggs and the males lay their sperm into the water at the same time. Now, the slender snipe eel only spawns once in their lifetime, as they just die after spawning. Now, it's difficult for scientists to research these organisms because of the extreme environment they inhabit, but hopefully one day we'll get more information on them. Number 4. Goblin shark. The goblin shark is a rare species of deep-sea shark. Sometimes called a living fossil, they are part of a lineage of sharks that are some 125 million years old. The pink-skinned animal has a distinctive profile with an elongated flat snout and highly protrusible jaws containing prominent nail-like teeth. It is usually between 10 and 13 feet long when mature, though it can grow considerably larger because there was once one captured in 2000 that is thought to have been measured 20 feet. With 50 teeth in their mouths, those gruesome creatures command attention, and honestly not really for the right reasons. Interestingly, female goblin sharks are larger in adulthood than the male species. Now, despite their size, some researchers believe that these sharks could also dive the depths up to 4,270 feet for short periods of time. Number 3. Ozdax. Ozdax is Latin for bone eater, and these animals are also known as zombie worms. The name alludes to how these worms bore into the bones of whale carcasses to reach enclosed lipids on which they rely for substance. With no mouth, anus, or gut, the 4-centimeter long worms survive by secreting an acid that breaks up the whale bone. Now, why do these even exist? I don't know. They utilize specialized root tissues for bone boring, and it is possible that multiple species of Ozdax reside in the same bone. Ozdax worms are also known to feed on the collagen itself by making holes in the whale's skeletal structure. These holes can also serve as a form of protection from nearby predators. Scientists from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute using the submarine Rav Tiburn first discovered the species in Monterey Bay, California in February 2002. The worms were found living on the bones of a decaying gray whale in the Monterey Canyon at a depth of 9,491 feet. Number 2. Deep sea dragonfish. Deep sea dragonfish are quite small, usually around 15 centimeters up to 26 centimeters. These fish are apex predators and have enormous jaws filled with fang-like teeth. In addition, they are also able to hinge their upper jaw system, which leads to them opening the jaw to more than 100 degrees, which is scary. This ability allows them to consume extremely large prey, often 50% greater than their standard length. The dragonfish can be found in all oceans, and they also exist at a wide range of depths between the surface and thousands of meters down, between 3,300 and 9,800 feet. It is one of the many species of deep sea fish that can produce their own light through a chemical process known as bioluminescence. They cannot luminesce longer than 30 minutes without adrenaline, but in the presence of adrenaline, it can produce light for many hours. They produce blue-green light, the wavelengths of which can travel the farthest in the ocean. The deep sea dragonfish waves its barbel back and forth and produces flashing lights on and off to attract prey and potential mates. Many of the species they prey upon also produce light themselves, which is why they have evolved to have black stomach walls to keep the light concealed while digesting their meal in order to stay hidden from predators. And coming in at number 1 is immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small biological immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropic waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage when it is starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp similar to an anemone. The polyp then releases ephora or young jellyfish in the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps on the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool, but it's crazy that they can do this.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Kraken caught on camera. So over the years, scientists have been determined to seek the validity of the Kraken. In fact, in 2012, they wanted to capture one on camera, and their wish came true. The team of researchers did this by lowering a camera 2,000 feet below the sea south of Japan. They also lowered down a custom lure that they called E-Jelly. Basically, it was a small spinning ring of neon blue lights that was attached to an outstretched mechanic arm. The light would move in ways mimicking a bioluminescent jellyfish. They didn't want to use real live bait as they were afraid it would attract other sea creatures. And the light bait worked perfectly fine. In the end, a giant squid was captured coming towards the camera and wrapping itself around the light bait, and eventually it even attacked the camera. People believe that the Kraken is just a giant squid, so what the scientists caught on camera could be the Kraken. In our 9th spot today, we have a most terrible creature. In 1734, Danish missionary Hans Edge wrote in his journal that he was aboard a ship that encountered what sounds to be like a kraken. In his entry dated July 6, 1734, he wrote about how he saw a most terrible creature, as he called it, resembling nothing that he had ever seen before. The monster lifted its head high in the water, so high that it was taller than the crow's nest on the ship. The creature was using giant fins or tentacles to help propel itself through the water. He wrote that it was longer than their ship and it shook everyone on board. The drawings accompanied by this account look just like how we picture the Kraken, so maybe they really did encounter one. In our 8th spot today, we have the sea beast of Google Earth. Google Earth was doing its job snapping photos of the land when something was caught lurking in the waters. Now, we don't know for sure what exactly it is, but what we do know is that whatever it is massive. So the picture was taken off the coast of Deception Island in Antarctica. And with a name like that, it's pretty fitting that a kraken may be living in its waters. The satellite image shows some gray creature with a big, roundish head and tentacles. Now, it is hard to tell what it is, but people do believe that it's a giant squid or kraken. And whatever it is, it made some pretty big waves in the water around it. It's just a good thing that no one was around when this beast was splashing about. Moving on to number 7, we have the King and his Beast. One of the first sightings of the Kraken was written by King Sverre of Norway in 1180. In his entry, he wrote about how this beast was some kind of squid-like monster and how it threatened the seas. He warned sailors that they should be careful sailing in the dangerous seas as they were home to many beasts. In our 6th spot, we have newfound krakens. Over the years in Newfoundland, a number of body parts have washed up on shore. The body parts are said to belong to none other than the kraken. The earliest known time of this happening was in 1873. That's when the kraken apparently attacked a boat, and in an attempt to escape, the people on board hacked off the creature's tentacles. Only then did it let go of their boat and leave them alone. A few weeks later, more limbs were discovered. However, this time, they just washed up on shore by themselves. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the North Pole Kraken. Apparently, there are krakens located all over the world. We've had sightings in Japan, Canada, and now the North Pole. Over the years, a number of weird creatures have been spotted in the North Pole in the Arctic Sea. All sightings are pretty much the same. They see a massive dark figure lurking underwater with what appears to be long, snake-like tentacles coming out from their body. The creatures never rise out of the water, but the witnesses see them swim by in the dark waters. In our 4th spot today, we have the aggressive kraken. In 2005, 2 Japanese marine biologists discovered what they believed to be the Kraken. Basically, there were reports of a squid attacking bait lines. Turns out that this was a massive squid, and it was aggressively attacking these baited lines in the area. Now, they did actually manage to capture footage of it, and they were able to identify the creature as being an archaeology. This is a rare species that can seize bait with extreme force. Also, they're known for being pretty violent. And this creature was close to 30 feet in length, which is pretty massive. They can even attack ships. So this got them thinking, what if this species of aggressive giant squids are what people call krakens? In our third spot today we have giant squids. In 1870, a giant squid washed up in New Zealand. It was said to be as tall as the top of a ship's main mast, and it could easily take over a ship by wrapping its tentacles around the hull and crushing it. Is it true? Who knows? But around 2005, scientists caught a photo of one. Now they believe that there are millions of them out there, some of course bigger than others, and some more aggressive than others. In our second spot, we have the dead kraken. In 2020, a dead giant squid, or kraken, washed ashore at a beach in South Africa. Resident Adele Gross was the one who came across it, and her initial instinct was to try and save its life. She said, and I quote, "At first I just wanted to get it back into the ocean, but on closer observation one could see that it was dead." She apparently was out walking on the beach with her husband when they stumbled upon this squid. They both were taken aback by its appearance. After realizing that it was indeed dead and there was no use saving it, they decided to figure out how it died. Apparently, the night before they spotted big swells in the same area that the squid was found. But upon closer inspection, the squid did not have any bite marks or injuries that they could see. So to this day, this beast remains a mystery. How did it die? And does it have any bigger relatives living out there? And in our number one spot today, we have the unknown kraken. In 1848, a number of men were aboard the Royal Navy's HMS Daedalus when they encountered this weird sea creature. Captain Peter McQuay wrote, and I quote, "It was an enormous serpent. Its color a dark brown, with yellowish white about the throat. It had no fins, but something like the mane of a horse, or rather a bunch of seaweed washed about its back." He continued on saying, and I quote, "It passed rapidly, but so close under our lee quarter that had it been a man of my acquaintance, I should have easily recognized his features with the naked eye." AKA, it was a creature he had never seen before, and he's well versed in these creatures, so had it been something he had seen before, he would have recognized it. Boom. That's what he meant.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Titan's Ocean. Yeah, we'll start this list with an ocean signal out of this world. I mean that in a literal sense. This first one comes from Thanos' home planet, Titan. Yeah, it's one of Saturn's many moons. Saturn has 82 moons in total, so if you were a werewolf and you lived on Saturn, odds are you'd be pretty exhausted. Around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water inside the shell of ice that is that moon. That's pretty exciting. Also, water in space anywhere is exciting, but also I'm like, aliens, they're coming. To quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it's abundant. Abundant, did you hear that? It's abundant. Nice. We love abundant sea creatures resting on the moon Titan. NASA has detected low frequency radio waves on Saturn's icy moon, and it sounds pretty eerie. To know this is off planet entirely, if there's water involved, I don't want to hear any space whales. I'm all set. Number 9, submarine propeller. When it comes to creepy sounds or signals heard from the ocean, here or out there, it really depends on who you ask if it's creepy or not. A submarine propeller firing up underwater, to many, is nothing. Just another day working on the Navy, if anything. But this guy, with submechanophobia, the fear of big things underwater, the sound of a submarine propeller firing up is absolutely haunting. My palms are literally sweating just reading this. The noise of the propeller is traceable, but the sonar, that can mess up some whales. Sonar underwater is so loud you can feel it through your entire body. It's definitely not something you want to witness up close. It's like standing near the speaker at a club. Your bones just feel it. Take a listen. Take a listen. Also, a little headphone warning. It's exactly what you expect. Number 8, slow down. Not to be confused with Slow Ride, that's an absolute banger from the 70s. Slow Down was recorded on May 19th, 1997, so a little bit later. It was picked up in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, just in the middle of literally nowhere. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked it up not once, but several times every year. Our best guess as to what this sound is, perhaps it's moving ice in Antarctica. But the fascinating part here is that this sound decreases in frequency over time. It takes about 7 minutes in total, so we can't include the entire clip or else you'd be pretty bored. But here's the clip 16 times as fast. Scientists believe the sound is a massive iceberg scratching against the ocean floor over, of course, 7 minutes. And then after 7 minutes, it came to a halt. But the fact that we hear this sound every year, that's the concerning part. We're like, why is it coming out and then halting again? Cthulhu, is that you, or is it a lot of ice melting? Most likely the latter, but who knows? Number 7. Whistle. If you can whistle, honestly, hats off to you. I've been trying for years. My lips are too dry and too weak. I have weak lips, apparently. The whistle recorded in July 1997 is not weak, and as this list hints towards, it's certainly not dry. The thing with this mysterious sound is that it was only picked up by one hydrophone, meaning scientists can't pinpoint its location, making this an unexplained sound. It came from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, so sleep with that in your head. Somewhere. How calming is that? Here's the unidentified sound. What do you think this is? The National Oceanic and the NOAA rather, has compared the sound to some volcanic activity heard in the Mariana Volcanic Arc. But again, we can't pinpoint it at all, so we have no idea. We need 3 hydrophones to do so. This one was only heard in 1. Number 6, upsweep. Unidentified yet again. Love to hear it. Literally. Sound travels much faster underwater than it does in air, more than 4 times as fast. So when we hear these noises, one, they're incredibly loud, which is the most impressive part in my opinion. But because sound travels so quickly, it's hard to find out where these calls are coming from. Upsweep is an unidentified sound that was heard throughout the entire Pacific Ocean. When the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory fired up its sound surveillance system back in August 1991, these sounds were heard. See, unlike the sounds we've covered so far, this one happens in real time. It's not sped up because it's 17 minutes long, it's just, that's it, that's what it sounded like. These upsweeping sounds lasting a few seconds each ping is definitely concerning. The source was roughly located around New Zealand and South America, somewhere around those places, and it peaks around autumn and spring. So maybe it's just a monster tucking itself in for the winter, and then maybe it's waking back up in spring. Who knows? Scientists at the NOAA have a better idea so far. A little boring, but they believe it's underwater volcanic activity. I say boring, it's not really boring, it's just predictable, I guess. This sound has been getting lower pitched every year, so who knows? Maybe that's a bad thing, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe this thing's gonna go off. Maybe it's gonna go off tomorrow. That was 30 years ago, so any day. Number 5, Julia. Who is she? Who is this Julia chick we've been talking about? Julia sounds like a rather friendly addition to this list, but don't let her name fool you. Julia is terrifying, definitely, yeah. Back in March 1999, this noise here was recorded again by the NOAA, and this time the noise was heard across the entire Pacific Ocean hydrophone array. So across all that distance, we heard Julia. So whatever made this noise, be it an iceberg, volcanic activity, giant fish from Legend of Zelda, it's got power behind those vocals, you know, she's loud. The point of its origin is determined to be somewhere around Bransfield Straits and Cape Adare. This Cape Adare gets a lot of action in the world, sound-wise and bloop-wise, and we think it's because of icebergs, but maybe the Kraken's name is just Julia. Maybe this is her just slowly introducing herself to the world. Again, it's a long clip in real time, but sped up, sounds like somebody's humming underwater. It's terrifying. Take a listen. This one creeps me out a lot. I think I've heard the hum before. I don't know. Maybe it was Kid Cudi in the distance. Maybe it was this hum. Either way, I'm on board. The hum has been heard for decades now. We have no idea where the hum is coming from. Our best guess is that it has something to do with, of course, as the title hence the ocean. A resident from Woodland, England spoke out on their experience saying, "It vibrates through the house. We've turned all the electricity off in the house and we can still hear it. So it's not that. It's not tinnitus, that's a high-pitched sound and this is very low. If I put my fingers in my ears, it stops, so I know it's not in my head." It's heard commonly in Hawaii, Britain, North America, so it's, hey, everywhere. It's been heard everywhere, I guess. Some have called it the Windsor hum, which is insanely close to us, hence why I think I've heard it in real life. I put the microphone to you now, people, the fine people of YouTube. Have you heard the hum? If so, where were you? Comment down below. Number 3, 2021 boom. A little bit more recent for this one. Back in early 2021, San Diego residents reacted to what sounded like a sonic boom. Well, it's been heard 3 times since the initial report, and many still have questions. I have questions. Now you have questions. Windows were shaking, doors were rattling, all of San Diego heard and felt this thing. But what was it? An earthquake? Being in San Diego and all residents are used to earthquakes, but this was entirely different. Everyone felt something new here. Also, it helps to know that no earthquakes were reported at this time, so that theory is just out of the way. And the Marines didn't take responsibility for it as well. And if it was a sonic boom from a plane, well, that would be pretty obvious. We'd kind of have an idea. We'd have a few ideas if it was a plane ripping overhead. Plus, they're not allowed to do that kind of stuff that close to the coast. December 28th, 2021, residents were posting their thoughts on Twitter. One user tweeted, "San Diego is cool because I'm like, oh wow, just felt an earthquake, but not actually, it was a sonic boom." Well, keep an ear out for any more mysterious sonic booms coming from the ocean in 2022. The last one wasn't long ago at all. If you live in San Diego, drop us a comment, help us understand what's going on. Number 2, the train. This sound was given its name because, well, it sounds like a passing train in the distance. Simple as that. Sometimes it's not, scientific. It was first recorded on March 5th, 1997, and it sounds, honestly, it sounds like my PS4. It sounds really loud. It sounds like a really loud, really hot fan that's gonna just lift up and take off in the middle of playing Warzone. I'm like, hi, no, come back. Here's the clip. The leading theory as to what's making the sound is not a surprising one. Large icebergs grounding near Ross Sea and Cape Adare. Again, that's probably the most plausible explanation here. Friendly reminder that more than 80% of the ocean is undiscovered, so my only question is, what if it's not? Number 1, 52 Hertz whale. I love whales because they're the closest thing to a dinosaur, in my opinion. They're massive, we have no idea how they mate, that's still a mystery. We mentioned that in another list. They're beautiful, complex creatures that we should just leave alone. Probably, definitely. Especially the 52 Hertz whale. Well, maybe not 2 alone, because there's a documentary about this sound. Joshua Zeman made a documentary about the loneliest whale on the planet. Sounds pretty depressing, but it's equally as interesting. For decades now, we've heard this sound. Back in 1989, the US Navy first detected this sound that measured in at more than twice the frequency of a normal, healthy whale call. So this thing's loud. Originally, what got them intrigued was the fact that this could have been a military mechanical sound, of course. But then they thought, well, maybe it's an animal. Perhaps this is like a new Cthulhu hybrid dinosaur thing that someone's working on. This is a lonely whale, but why is its frequency scaring away possible friends and mates?
In our number 10 spot today, we have musical instruments. 2 parts of a destroyed clarinet as well as a violin that was played by bandmaster Wallace Hartley were found among the wreckage of the Titanic. I know musical instruments aren't exactly a terrifying discovery, but the discovery reminds us of the heartbreaking story of the Titanic's band. As the Titanic sank, it is famously known that the band played on despite the absolutely horrific incident that was taking place around them. At first, it was widely believed that they did this because they were ordered to, and for the record, if this were the case, that still would have been insanely brave of them. But as it turns out, this is far from true. The band members were in fact not ship employees, which means that they had the same rights as any passengers to leave. So why didn't they? Well, it is now widely believed that it most likely was so that they could use their music to help calm people so that they wouldn't panic. That's some major bravery right there. In our number 9 spot today, we have a men's shoe. This artifact is one of the rarest to be shown of the items that have been recovered from the Titanic wreckage because of the fact that it is in such poor condition. All that remains of the shoe are the welt, top cap, and just a touch of the insole. This artifact does a couple things. It reminds you of the very real humans who became victims of this tragedy, and it also reminds you of the unrelenting nature of the ocean. Seeing the personal belongings of the passengers, regardless of knowing who specifically the shoe belonged to in their story, just adds a personal element, like you almost knew them. And then seeing how torn up the shoe has become is a strong reminder to us all that we truly are no match for Mother Nature, and the ocean is one of the most powerful and frightening things on the earth. In our number 8 spot today we have a love letter. Richard Geddes was a cabin attendant on the Titanic who wrote a love letter to his wife while aboard, but unfortunately she would never go on to receive it. The letter was written on the original Titanic stationery, and it even had its original White Star Line envelope when it was found. While this story in itself is of course extremely sad, and again one of those reminders of the human side of those who were in this incident, this letter also contained something else beside utterings and confessions of love. It also featured a description that Richard wrote for his wife of a near collision that the Titanic had with the SS City of New York, obviously prior to the terrible iceberg incident. There were people who had witnessed this near collision and believed that it was a bad omen for the Titanic. In our number 7 spot today we have a pocket watch. Okay, this artifact most certainly isn't the scariest one on today's list, but the story behind who it belonged to is one for the books. Sinai Cantor was 34 years old when he was a passenger on the Titanic. On board with him was his wife Miriam, and the pair were from Russia. They purchased second-class passenger tickets, which at the time cost them £26, which is about $3,666 in today's money. When tragedy struck and the Titanic was sinking, Sinai immediately thought of his wife. He was able to get her aboard one of the life rafts thankfully, and as far as I know, she was rescued from the icy waters. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for him, however, as he ended up being one of those who passed away in the sinking of the ship. During rescue efforts, this pocket watch ended up being recovered from his body. In our number 6 spot today we have the inspection card. This inspection card once belonged to a woman named Marion Meanwell. What could possibly be worrisome about an inspection card? Well, it shows how Marion was not intended to be on the Titanic, but by some turn of events, she unfortunately found herself as one of the passengers. The card shows that she was originally meant to be traveling on a ship called the Majestic. For some reason, the trip she originally had planned was delayed, and she instead was assigned to the ill-fated Titanic. You can see that the word Majestic was crossed out on her card, which shows us the change in plans. If only people were able to see what was about to strike and could have warned her. In our number 5 spot today we have the Titanic radio. Okay, don't yell at me. This is a piece of the ship that has not yet been recovered, but it's the focus of much debate on whether or not it should be retrieved from the wreckage. Known in 1912 as the Marconi wireless telegraph machine, the radio on the Titanic sent distress calls to nearby ships that ended up saving the lives of 700 people in lifeboats. Despite how many people died in the Titanic tragedy, many of their bodies have never been recovered, which is why there were debates about whether or not to retrieve the artifact, because of the fact that there might still be remains located in the same area as the radio is. Lawyers have argued against the recovery of the radio because the dive plan did not include the prospect of there being human remains located down there. It also was argued because in order to retrieve it, they would need to cut into the ship's radio compartment, which was strongly opposed by preservation advocates. As of right now, it appears as though the dive to retrieve the radio will still occur, but it isn't exactly clear when. This radio would be a very valuable artifact, but it also would hold an eerie tale of exactly when and how the radio was used during the final moments of the Titanic. In our number 4 spot today we have the telegraph. Separate from the radio we just talked about, the ship's telegraph machine was recovered in 1987, and this was used to relay commands to the engine room. So it was used as a communication device on board rather than to communicate with other ships. This telegraph machine is likely the one that was used to communicate to turn away from the iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. Unfortunately, these commands came way too late as the ship struck the iceberg only 37 seconds after it was finally seen, and we all know what happened next. This telegraph was actually part of a Titanic auction that featured over 5,000 recovered artifacts that were selling for a combined some $200 million. In our number 3 spot today we have the bell. The bell from the crow's nest of the Titanic was recovered from the wreckage and returned to land, where it now resides in the Titanic Museum. The eerie story behind this bell is that it would have been the one that was rung 3 times by the lookout, Frederick Fleet, in order to attempt to warn of the iceberg that was ahead. Frederick, as well as the other lookout who was with him, Reginald Lee, both ended up thankfully surviving the incident and went on to later explain what happened from their point of view. They explained that if they had been given binoculars to assist with their job, they could have seen the iceberg sooner. When asked how much sooner, Frederick replied, "Well, enough to get out of the way." In our number 2 spot today we have the Big Piece. This was a 15-ton section of the Titanic that ended up being recovered from the ocean ocean floor. The wreckage of the Titanic was not found until 1985 when oceanographer Robert Ballard was doing a secret underwater expedition. The big piece is about 26 by 12 feet and it was once a section of the ship's starboard side hull. This piece also has a part of the original support beam that attached this piece to the frame of the ship. It is said that where this piece was located on the ship, basically everything else around it was absolutely obliterated when the ship split in two. This artifact is said to be the reminder of the most violent aspect of the sinking of the ship, which is a horrifying thought. It was found among many other smaller pieces of the ship that had all been broken up. In our number 1 spot today we have this cherub statue. In the remnants of the Titanic, they recovered a broken cherub statue that once found its home on the grand staircase of the Titanic. Aside from cherubs just being kind of creepy in general, there's something exceptionally eerie about this piece of religious iconography being at the center of such a huge disaster, as well as being found among the wreckage years later. Cherubs are usually known as bearers of the throne or creatures who attend to God, so it's just a little creepy to have one at the scene of a terrible disaster, as well as it making through all of the years and years that the Titanic was underwater waiting to be found.
Starting us off at number 10 is True North. Very few places on Earth will ever actually point to true north. What is true north? True north is the direction that points exactly towards the geographic North Pole. Being that there are next to no markers and obviously no landmarks in the middle of the ocean, when GPS and other high-tech systems go awry, ships and other craft are forced to use their compasses as a way to stay on track. Compasses operate usually by pointing towards magnetic north, as the compass aligns with Earth's magnetic field. Magnetic north can shift depending on the change in the Earth's magnetic core, which operators and sailors are prepared for, thus creating a huge issue when operators and sailors traveling through the mysterious triangle discover that their compass is no longer working properly, because it's pointing to true north instead of magnetic north. I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've ever had to use a compass, and I think no matter what my compass reads, I would still be lost at sea. So Bermuda doesn't sound like the greatest vacay spot, but let's continue to see what's in store before we make up our mind. At number 9, we have the deepest spot on Earth. So we always talk about how much we want to keep exploring space and we want to get to know our own universe, but you know what's really funny to me? We still have barely scraped the surface, or under the surface, for exploring our own ocean. One of those places being the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is home to one of the deepest spots on Earth. Underneath the surface, the topography of the seafloor goes from a gentle sloping continental shelf to a drop of a few hundred feet to another drop of a few who knows how many thousand feet. Many disappearances that have been reported in the Bermuda Triangle could have their answers laying somewhere at the bottom of these deep trenches. But until we actually start exploring our oceans just as much as we explore space, just like whatever lays at the bottom, we will be left in the dark. At our number 8 spot, we have methane gas. This gas is colorless, odorless, highly flammable, and one of the main components in natural gas, which we all use to generate electricity and heat our homes all around the world. But guess what? It's also in the Bermuda Triangle. Due to decomposing sea organisms, scientists have discovered large concentrations of methane gas trapped in the ocean floor. Methane accumulates as concentrated methane ice, and if and when a pocket ruptures, the gas rockets upwards towards the surface without any warning or notice to those sailing above. If a ship were to be in the area of the blowout, it could possibly sink because the water would become much less dense and sediment could quickly cover it as the wreck lands on the sea floor. As of right now, there is no proof that this is the reason for any of the missing ships that have been reported in the Bermuda Triangle, but then again, how would we ever know? At our number 7 spot, we have Rogue Waves. Now does that not sound like a great band name or what? Due to the location of the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic Ocean, storms can come from all directions. They can come from Mexico, from the equator, or the east side of the Atlantic. These storms of course make major waves reaching up to 30 feet or 10 meters tall, but what happens when they all come together at the exact same moment? These rogue waves can reach up to sizes of 100 feet or 30 meters tall. Engineers at the University of Southampton built models of different sized ships and simulated their own rogue waves in a wave tank for the small scale ships. What happened? These engineers discovered that these ships could indeed sink. The bigger the ship, the easier it was to sink, because big ships are designed to be supported in the front by the top of a wave, while the back is supported by another. But if hit by a rogue wave, those big ships, guess what? They snap in two. The small ones can sometimes survive if they hit the wave bow on, but most times will just get swallowed up completely. Rogue waves? Hopefully not coming to an ocean near you. At our number 6 spot, we have electronic fog. So far, out of the many distress calls claiming to come from an electronic fog, these stories and events have been labeled as supernatural and not taken seriously. But there are reports from actual pilots who have flown through these strange phenomena, and it's wild. Veteran pilot Bruce Gurnon reports that when he was flying with his father in his classic Bonanza plane back in 1970, about 3 miles off Andros Island, an elliptical-shaped cloud began forming in front of them. Before the father and son could escape the path of this mysterious cloud, they were engulfed and had a tunnel form all the way around them. And while in the cloud flying at 10,000 feet, they reported seeing lines and the tunnel spiraling counterclockwise while propelling them forward. They then started feeling the effects of zero gravity, and all of their navigational systems started to fail. Fortunately, this electronic spiraling fog tunnel dissipated and they found themselves right over Miami Beach and were once again able to pick up radar. The next strange thing? They traveled 100 miles in 30 minutes less time than usual. Similar stories to Gurnon's have been reported as well, but with no real answers to how or why. Some suspect it could be something related to the Hutchison effect, but as of right now, the electronic fog is still a mystery. Coming in at our number 5's midway spot is the once infamous mythical creature proven to be real, the giant squid. Aside from the many strange events and things found in the Bermuda Triangle, some have reported seeing a giant octopus, or octopi if there are more than one. I wonder. Now, as of right now, there is no such thing as these creatures, but giant squid are indeed a real animal, and 2 Japanese scientists believe they caught one on camera. In 2005, 2 Japanese scientists spotted a giant squid aggressively taking baited lines. Normally, these creatures are not known to be in this area of ocean, but the footage says differently. These giant squid can reach up to 150 feet. Seeing the aggressive nature of this creature as well as the size, it is no wonder some believe that they could be responsible for some of the disappearing ships. Speaking of, coming in our top 4 spot, we have ships that have gone missing. As I said earlier, there are more than 50 ships that are reported to have gone missing in the Bermuda Triangle over the years. One of the most notorious ones being the USS Cyclops. One of the Navy's largest fuel ships went missing back in March 1918. This ship was carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore with 309 crew members on board. Only one message was received from the ship during its voyage from Brazil to Baltimore, and it reported no trouble whatsoever while it was out on the sea. But then, it sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. The ship never made it to its destination and was never found. Not only was the ship never found, but also no debris or crew members either. There was no distress call received anywhere. One of the largest ships in the Navy and everything on board and everyone on board gone missing in a flash with no explanation? That's scary. Starting us off at our number 3 spot is planes gone missing. Over 20 aircraft just like ships have gone missing over the years, and some of these reports are quite recent too. One of the latest being just last year in May when a small twin-engine plane mysteriously went missing. Same thing as the USS Cyclops, those aboard started their flight with no complications whatsoever, and there were no distress calls reported or anything out of the ordinary. Once again, no wreckage, crew, or any signs of any explanation can be found. But maybe our next one on the list will help. At our number 2 spot, we have UFO sightings. If you have been keeping up to date with any of the alien news lately, you will know that there have been more than a couple of sightings all over North America in the last few years. One of them taking place over the Bermuda Triangle, April 28, 2020, reported by not just anyone, but the United States Air Force. Many of the United States Air Force members have come out quite recently with more and more sightings, with some of them dating all the way back to the 1970s, right over top of the Bermuda Triangle. I hear more and more alien information every day, and I am loving it. If I ever have a major reason to go to Bermuda, it's to see some aliens. Come on, who's coming with me? Finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is something we're going to have to grab our proton packs for, because our final and weirdest thing found in Bermuda is ghost ships. Back in 1881, the infamous Ellen Austin ship experienced a ghost ship in an area of the Bermuda Triangle before things went awfully awry. The crew of the Ellen Austin discovered the ship fully stocked but with no crew on board or anywhere to be seen. Seeing an opportunity for a free ship with supplies, part of the Ellen Austin crew took over the ship and prepared to sail back with the ships side by side. Just then, an unexpected storm came out of nowhere and totally engulfed the 2 ships. After the storm was over the next day, both ships came out of the Terror, but no crew was anywhere to be seen on the picked up ghost ship. Just then, crew members and captain of the Ellen Austin came aboard once again and then got swallowed up by a mysterious fog. And once the fog cleared, the ghost ship completely vanished along with everything and everyone. I hate to say it, but I guess that's karma, and she's always gonna come for you.